Put your red shirt on and a brown coat too. Everybody's joining the crew. We got just one ring that we rule them all. Hope people remember your towels. Get your Ulu feathers and your needler guns. A sonic screwdriver or a sword +1. Use Valerian steel if it will get you to come. To the big tank. To the big tank. The Rocky Mountain big tank.
Hi, I'm Guy,
Hi, I'm Troy.
Hi, I'm Alex.
and this is Geek Tank.
The Thank You for Your Service Size podcast.
So we're going to talk a little bit today about Memorial Day.
Why?
I think it's kind of...
it is today.
Yeah, it is. And I think it's kind of interesting and convenient that Star Trek Strange New Worlds created an episode called Memento Mori, which was this past week's episode. One of the functions of this episode was that, and this is not giving away any spoilers of the episode itself. It was a great episode, spectacular episode. But they are all wearing pins or devices above their communication or their normal badges, because they don't have communicators at this point. And the devices above it are from their previous ships that they served on. And it's their Memorial Day. So they're remembering all of the previous ships that they worked on or that they served on and things like that. So they wore a device above their Delta. And I was thinking about that a lot. And I think it's a clever and nice way of honoring, in a way, our service members who have done this before. So that was kind of cool. I thought
I'm a ways away from diving into Strange New Worlds, although what I find interesting related to Strange New Worlds, to slightly deter off the topic, was that many of my friends who don't like much of the new Star Trek stuff have said finally they've hit the right notes.
Right.
So my anti-new Star Trek friends are liking this new Star Trek, but they still don't like the previous new Star Trek stuff.
I don't know if you want to deep dive into this one.
Not that. No, it's Memorial Day talk, not Star Trek talk.
Right. I don't know, because there's a lot I got on this one right now, and so
There's
we'll
that.
When's the next actual official Star Trek Day? Because I know there's a Star Trek Day.
Usually our Star Trek days are September 8th.
Okay, let's do that on September 8th.
Yeah. Or if
long
we
ways
peter out a
from now.
Memorial Day, we can go, and now to Mr. Davis.
Well, I was going to say, if you do, but please write it down somewhere.
This
because
is
I won't
TNN.
remember.
Yeah, we'll put a disclaimer on that show that it could run long.
Yeah.
From 10 p.m. to 3 a.m. or something. All right.
Well, I mean, it is a big topic.
It is.
I mean,
It's
It
a
is
big.
I just want to
And
break it
it's
up.
interesting that I'm having that discussion right now with an individual
Well,
online.
you talk about Star Trek every other second, so I'm not surprised. So our connection to the military. Interesting enough, I know I think, if I'm remembering correctly, our friend Brent was in the military.
Yep.
So thank you, Brent. And we have several friends. One friend who is still
Donald was in
Donald?
the Navy. Yeah.
And of course our friend James is still active, correct?
Yep.
So
James is active. He's a lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Army.
yep, my father served in the Army, was a tank mechanic, and did some drill instructor stuff too, which is funny because he's like so quiet and reserved. You would never think of him as like a drill instructor.
Right.
And then so that's my connection. And
My sister served during Kosovo and Bosnia. My father served during Vietnam, though he served in Turkey and Germany during that time. And so he was a spook. So he didn't do, he wasn't actually in the jungles.
He
Something
did
he-
whatever the public record says he was doing. He was where the
Exactly.
public record says he was.
He was a spook. So there was a lot of there's a lot of stuff that disappeared with him when he left. So I was working on stringing my violin, but I'm not going to do it.
Yep. And my stepfather was in the Navy. He was a nuclear technician on a boomer. And then when he got out, he started working with the DOE. We moved out here to Colorado because he worked at Rocky Flats in safety and helped decommission Rocky Flats, and still works for the DOE. Right now, he's at the Las Vegas lab. He's worked at other labs around the country. Mm-hmm. My little brother was an MP in the Army. And so I was definitely the most. I'm 7 years older than my next oldest sibling, being my little brothers Neil and Mikhail. And so I got the full military brat experience. And there we go. We're our own ethnic group.
And it'd be, I think it's because I've only had like 3 sips of coffee that this was totally slipping my mind. But I was negligent in not mentioning that my mom,
your mom,
and my other mom, my mom by marriage, were both served as civilians in the military and working with family advocacy work and helping the military from that perspective. And then later on, my mom did event coordination for the recruiters. So for the recruitment team, she would set up parties for them and such, and conferences and such. And then my dad by marriage was also in the military. So, but yeah,
your dad, dude, that's weird.
I said by marriage, not married to. I mean, I guess you could say I'm married to him because I
was gonna say my mother-in-law. I feel kind of like
your mother. But yeah,
I mean, and that's also something to bring up. Is also we should mention that Anna was
yes.
She was enlisted.
Thank you. Yeah. There's just so many. It's hard to keep track.
Right, and then on my dad had a number of buddies who were in the service. So there's a lot of them that I tended to nod to. My grandfather served in World War II in the Corps of Engineers. My other grandfather, my other grandfather, we don't know what he did, but when I got his ribbons back, he had Liberation of Berlin and Liberation of France on it as ribbons. So he was on Normandy, but he didn't say anything about it.
Yeah,
he never talked about it. Yeah. Right, exactly. So that was what Dad and I said. We were like, yeah, that means that he saw some stuff and he didn't want to talk about it. But he was on Normandy. That was my dad's dad. My mom's dad stayed in Seattle through most of the war, but he built a lot of things. He built bridges that they would blow up to test how they could blow up bridges. Then my great uncle served on Hard Stand 1 at one of the he was a mechanic, a B-17 mechanic on Hard Stand 1 at I just lost the name of it, one of the fields in England. And he had some stories which were interesting, and I've got his album back here from the war where he took pictures of planes and B-17s and their crews, and he wrote down every crew that never came back.
Okay.
And that's holding that notepad. It's a physical notepad. And when you hold that notepad where he wrote down all the ships and all of their numbers, their registration numbers when they didn't come back, and all their crews, that's weighty. That weighs a lot, So.
If I'm remembering correctly, Alex, didn't you say that you considered to go into the Navy, or you actually had signed up, but then?
Yeah, it's I guess I'll tell the story. It's
Sorry.
It's not a story that I normally tell. So, hello world. This is
right. I was going to say this is not one we should probably ask Alex. Do you?
I'm sorry. I apologize because I don't remember much about the details. And if I'm getting into an area you don't want to tread, let's just move on.
No, it's okay. And honestly, I think for the most part, people need to talk about things and their experiences and what led them to the things. So, So before I tell that story, I got to tell some other stuff. So when I was younger, I was a crazy person, and people look at me now like, no, you're still kind of a crazy person, and you're not wrong. But I was really crazy. I had a lot of abandonment issues. I had a lot of self-worth issues. I had a lot of unhealthy ways to deal with said issues, mostly getting into people's faces and fighting a lot. So I drop out of high school and I'm like, smart guy. I got nothing doing. Why not try the military thing? Who gives a shit? And I sign up and I freaking ace, the ASVAB and all that crap. And yeah, I'm going. Yay. And so I go and I know what they're doing because I'm a military brat. I'm invested. I know how it goes. We get off the bus, they're doing their thing. We sleep for like 2 hours. I actually take a shower because I know it's coming. I'm like, I'm going to have a shower before the rest of this bullshit at basic starts and do that, hop in the rack. And yeah, they kick us out of it like an hour later or something. And they're yelling at us. I'm like, yeah, yeah, yeah. Because I'm just, I'm too fucking smart and crazy for that shit. And so they then shortly thereafter, like a couple of days in, I realized, you know what? I really, really, really hate taking orders from people I don't respect. I will absolutely take orders from people I respect, but just because you've been in here longer, that doesn't mean bullshit to me. I don't care. And so I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna get the fuck out of here, and I'm not gonna go AWOL like a bunch of these other dumbasses, because I'm too smart. And so they give us a test, about 100 questions or so. And I look at the test, and one thing I am great at is taking tests. So when you look at, say, Into Spider-Verse and Miles Morales gets 0 on his true and false test, the only way to get that is to know all the answers and get them wrong. I hit every question I possibly could within a certain range to red flag. And so they take me, and like a bunch of different companies are doing this, and they take me and a couple dozen other people, and they say, okay, here's a printout of all the questions you red flagged, the answer you gave to that question, and a small section to write why you answered that way. And I'm like, I got this. Ba 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 ba. Give the test back. They then go ahead and take me and maybe, I don't know, 1 dozen. Like half of us get weeded right there. Go back to company. Me and like another dozen or so people, we go into another room. Here's another test. And I'm like, cool, great at taking tests. I got this. And I just like red flag more stuff. Okay. You, me, and like 3 other dudes, you stick around. Rest of you back to company. Okay. Sitting there, talk to a shrink. Well, I'm also great at talking to people, and I already know what my goal is to get out. And so the shrink talks to us about the questions we answered, and I'm just like, boom, 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 boom. Never asked. I mean, I never give them, and they never ask about my problem with just giving my leash over to anybody just cause. We don't really hit on that, but we know like this violent thing, this dangerous behavior, this objective based reasoning, we go through all that. And so, and they're doing triage. They're trying to determine whether or not I need to be separated out. And at one point they're like, are you a danger to yourself or others? I'm like, if people are cool with me, I'll be cool with them. Okay. And then they're like, okay. And then the last question they ask me is, do you want to be here? And I realized a few years ago, I'm 46 now. This was back when I was 18. I'm turning 46 in 5 days. I was 18 back then. And so a few years ago, I realized, if I had answered in the affirmative, because I didn't, I said no. I said, okay, well, you're getting separated out. Your paperwork will be your records here will be destroyed after, whatever, 180 days, I think. It's been a while. And then you can re-enlist if you want to or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, that's never happening. So I said no. But a few years ago, I realized, and I was talking this out with Anna, whom you named earlier. were just driving somewhere. And we're kind of talking about the military experience and the brat experience and because she's got a kid who originally she had one in the military. And I was like, oh, wow. Well, thank you, Donald. Woohoo, 46. Yeah, going strong. So I realized, and we kind of commiserated on this, like if I had answered in the affirmative, and if I said something like, yeah, I do, but I'm not going back to fucking company like those numb fucks, then I would have been like, oh, you are going into operator track, which is interesting to me.
Spook.
No, I think much more wet.
Wet.
Because that's me.
Yeah.
And so I was like, huh, that's an interesting insight to have 30 years after the fact, or 25 years after the fact. So yeah, so that's what happened to me and my personal experience. I got sepped out and was still adrift because I was still crazy. I was not dealing with my issues in any constructive way. So it took me a while.
Well,
to
it's
get
not like at that time society was helping in any way for people going down that path. It's and a lot of stuff just wasn't recognized at the time.
Lot since then. We definitely learned a lot since then.
I've learned a lot since then. And
I never got as far as enlisting or joining, but I was in ROTC in both high school and in college, and they wanted me, but I just wanted to get my 4 years of college paid for, and
that's why my brother did it. Yeah,
and
that's why my sister did it.
Jobs they were offering me, none of them interested me except for the one that was related to psychology, which was like a 5-year degree that they wanted me to finish in 3 years. And I'm like, I don't have that much confidence in myself that I could do that. And I'm going to end up failing college and still ending up in the military. And you would have paid for me to fail. Because ultimately at the time, I wanted to get into crime enforcement somehow and preferably be like FBI or CIA. And what your brother did joining the MPs is what I was told would really be the better way to go than what I was looking at. But my brother told me the same thing that you had brought up. He said, you won't follow. You're horrible for the military because you don't like following orders. You like being part of a team that's doing something that you believe in. And if you have someone trying to tell you to do something that you don't believe in, or that you think is just the bad way of doing things, you're not going to do it. you aren't a follower. You're a team player, but you're not a follower, is kind of the way he put it to me. And I was too young to realize that how right he was. So I had stayed in the ROTC for long enough. And had they had what I wanted, I'm pretty darn sure I would have gone into it, but they didn't have it. Right. It didn't match up the way I envisioned it should match up.
And that makes some sense. I think all of us have something similar where we were in, because I did the same thing. I just ended up with, was it acceptable, or I was given an out. Like my sister went in and my mom looked at me one day and said, do you want to go in? And I said, no. But now at 50, I kind of wish I had joined the Navy. And I mean, like looking back on it, me personally, seeing where everybody else was who had been in the Navy, I feel like, yes, there's all kinds of not cool things about being in the military all the way across the board. But the kind of person that I am, I think I would have gotten a lot out of being in the Navy. I feel like it would have been an experience that I would have gained something from, as opposed to, like my dad had said, when he got out of the Army, he knew he didn't know what he wanted to do, but he knew he didn't want to be in the Army. Mm-hmm. Right. That was his quote to his dying day. He's like, he got out and he didn't know what he was going to do with his life, but he knew it wasn't being in the Army. And so I feel like I probably would have gotten into the Navy and said, hey, there are a lot of sucky things. There are a lot of things that aren't cool. I mean, everybody I've talked to who was in the Navy, there was, oh yeah, well, this sucked. Doing this sucked. Being, a deck ape sucks, whatever. Sure. But then I would have looked back on it and gone, well, that was cool. That was a nice, I would have been around really large aircraft. I would have been around really large ships. that obviously things like that attract me as a person. So the minutia of the day to day would have annoyed me, but the overview would have been cool, and traveling the world would have been neat.
Cool.
So I feel like I missed an opportunity with that one. So
Yeah.
unlike most people who are like, no, dodged a bullet there or whatever, I kind of regret.
Yeah, I think the bullet I dodged was I just wasn't a good fit and didn't see
Right.
it. Whereas you,
Well,
with
and
your
that's-
mind of remembering Star Trek stuff and airplanes, you're really big into airplanes and
Yeah.
just any aircraft. I feel like in the Navy there would have been something like you said, you'd never be able to be a pilot because of your eyesight, but there has to be a job that involves using a mind that can remember details like that.
Right.
And like even if it's just the person who sits there and looks at the radar and makes sure airplanes don't crash into each other.
Right.
So
I would have loved to have been in air traffic.
yeah,
ATAC would have been cool.
so
And that would have been fine. I would have been okay with that. And I would have been sweet. That would have been great.
Yeah. So looking at some of Donald's comments, yeah, it's like absolutely keep an eye on people like that. And yeah, no, I mean, honestly, looking at that and being in that situation, yeah, absolutely kill that guy.
Right.
Or he kills the rest of you.
Mhm.
I mean, absolutely.
Avionics.
But it's also
Yeah,
like
Brent's right. I would have been in avionics of some sort. And the truth is, my eyesight is starting to fail now.
okay.
But the truth
No,
is,
Alex
I had 20/20.
was in the middle. Alex was in
sorry.
the middle of something, dude.
yeah.
He
So
really was. I was reading the comments and then just
Okay.
totally
yeah, we know.
steamrolled out.
And
know.
then
like-
yeah, so to not get even more into my history, like I said, I have a problem taking orders from people I do not respect. And so what I wound up doing is that I joined really hardcore martial arts school for several years with a lot of extracurricular non-dojo things, wink wink, nudge nudge, and lived that life about as hard as you can in America, and absolutely handed my leash over to some people and did a bunch of crazy stuff. So yeah. So anyway, you're saying avionics guy.
No, I was just gonna say that would have been fine. I was
Yeah,
just
that would you would
you
have fit in
started
with that.
reading the comments, and I started reading the comics and the comments, and that's the only reason I just ran over you, is because single-minded.
Mhm.
Sometimes
Your
really
ear host shut
single-minded.
off while you were reading and didn't realize Alex was in something.
Yep. Alex was literally in a sentence, so I stepped on him because
Yeah.
that happens.
Well, if
Sorry,
it
Alex.
wasn't for the military and with my my mom, there's
Your
going to be a
mom.
lot of my moms being mentioned. Well, not that I have a lot of moms, but a lot of my mom being mentioned. But if she hadn't met the person who's my dad now, they never would have married. They never would have moved to Germany. I never would have ended up in Germany. I never would have met Tara. We never would have fallen in love, got married. I never would have had the kids I have.
Right.
Are we doing a sliding doors podcast?
Yeah,
Is that
we're
what's
doing
happening?
a what if. What if Alex the assassin and Guy the avionics and Troy the homeless freeloader because he got kicked out of the military for screwing up. One of
We all
these
meet in a
three-
bar.
We all meet in a bar, and Alex says, "I'm not talking to you, losers."
I can't talk to you losers. Everything I know is top secret.
You're boring. You're boring.
I'd be like,
but,
but planes.
yeah. What's interesting is it was my mom's birthday. We were living in Radcliffe, next to where Fort Knox is, and she was working for a lawyer as a paralegal, and she had got set up with a date with the man who is now my dad, Gene, and she wasn't gonna go because it was a blind date, and it was her birthday, and I'm like, it's your birthday, go on the date. As a teenager, and I wanted to be home alone and watch horror movies. But I'm sure part of my brain was not being selfish and did want her to have a good time. But there was definitely the part of my brain who's like, I can't watch Friday the 13th marathon if you're in the house. So
We got 2 minutes before we do that, Donald.
so
Finish, bro.
well, we're not always we're not pinpoint accurate on that, but thank you for reminding us, Donald. But yeah, it's interesting to think about all the what ifs related to that. And so Yeah, so I'm not going to talk for another 2 minutes. We could go now.
Okay, you can do that now. Well, let's go ahead and do this because Donald is right.
Thanks, Donald.
Geek Tank is sponsored by Kieran Games, Geekway Homes, and
Your
Your
mom.
mom.
And now that Starfest is sadly passed on, we can say that it is in memorandum now. So, or memoriam. Memoriam is the word, I believe, not memorandum. Memoriam.
They performed a service.
They performed a service. So yeah. The military has a big impact on all of our lives, but it also has a big impact on just American life in general. We have a lot of by fire here in the nation that was born by fire and sort of that kind of thing. And it's interesting that it plays an important part in a lot of the things that we like. I mean, Star Trek is one of them. Starfleet is the military version of the Federation, and that's kind of an interesting thing too, especially since it's pivoted to be peaceful. Of course, many people who know this, Gene Roddenberry served in World War II, and that was what he was doing during the war, and so he brought that with him. He was an Army Air Corps guy. So he brought Air Force in, and Matt Jeffries was the Navy guy. So that's part of one of the reasons why all of the naval stuff got straightened out somewhere along the line, because, of course, the way Gene Roddenberry saw Star Trek, it was from an airplane's point of view, and it was Matt Jeffries that brought it should be more like an aircraft carrier and less like an aircraft. So that's an interesting tilt to how Star Trek works, but the roots of Star Trek are very based in the U.S. Navy and the U.S. Air Force.
It's interesting since it wasn't a fighter carrier the way that Battlestar Galactica was,
right?
Because that, in my mind, that's more of an aircraft carrier.
Right. Well, I mean, the Enterprise is considered a heavy cruiser. That's the class of ship that is. It's considered a heavy cruiser, which, for those of you who are wondering, is designated CA, which is cruiser, armored, which was back from the early days where we had cruisers, and then we armored up the cruisers, and they were the armored cruisers, which were heavier. So we called them heavy cruisers. So there you go.
So Memorial Day originally was known as Decoration Day because people would decorate the tombstones of the fallen soldiers. What I found interesting looking up some stuff on it was that 25 different states tried to claim origin of the holiday.
Right.
So everybody wants to be the one that's like, no, we made it.
Yeah, there's lots of countries with dead military folk.
Go figure.
Yeah. So yeah, we have Memorial Day for people who have passed. We have Armed Forces Day for current people who are currently serving, and Veterans Day for those who have served. So
that's the
and Armed Forces Day. Like I always forget when it is, and it's like the week or so before Memorial Day.
Right. Well, and 11/11 is always like a big deal because of the Remembrance Day. So isn't that the end of World War I? Was 11/11 18? 11/11.
Yeah, because they delayed the end of the war of several months in order to have a nice poetical date.
I seem to remember that too.
So yeah, more.
Well, let's keep fighting because the date's not poetic enough.
It's not poetic enough. Yeah, military has done a lot of great things. And they've helped a lot of people. It is unfortunate that many people, their only way out of their terrible situation is the military, but that's a larger societal thing, not the military's fault necessarily.
That's the military's fault. Yeah.
But I mean, like integration, looking up different fuels. There's all sorts of stuff that the military does that are good.
Yeah, the Corps of Engineering going and helping other countries build bridges.
Yeah, so I mean, like that's one of the things that James has done a number of times, because he's been with the Corps of Engineers since the beginning, or some branch of the Corps of Engineers, with some minor exceptions. But for the most part, that's what he has done with his career, is go places and help them do stuff and help them fix things. The military is a very useful thing as far as also technologies. A lot of our technologies are born in the military. Alex is
I'm loving Brent's comment about
Yeah.
having Veterans Day or Remembrance Day is great to chill out with your hangover after the Marine Corps birthday.
right, because he's getting himself hammered on Marine Corps birthday.
Love it.
So there you go.
That's what I'm laughing about.
I agree with that. I concur. But yeah, I mean that's the thing. It's I mean that a lot of our technologies. It's one of the reasons why I'm so enamored with the military myself, is because their technologies are awesome.
Mhm.
I mean,
And there are
I remember the day when I saw the video on the internet of the Joint Strike Fighter landing vertically, and just like they did this beautiful video where they have the F-35 sitting there on the tarmac, and the little doors open on the back and the little doors open on the bottom, and then it just takes off straight up. And I was like, okay, see, that's cool. I mean, the AV-8B does the same thing, has been for a long time, but it can only hover for 90 seconds. And so I was so enamored with just that technology. That's such an amazing technology. Well done, you know. And the V-22, once it stopped crashing, it's a really cool aircraft. I mean, that's a nice one too. I've seen some amazing things with the V-22. So
well, that's your problem there, buddy. You installed too much crash stuff. Take that crash
Too
pod
many
out of there,
crash
and you'll work
pieces.
just fine.
yeah, take out
So
all the crash pieces and it'll be better.
So mentioning all the good stuff, of course, being devil's advocate, have to bring up some of the bad stuff. But like VA, the military's like our friend Kevin, who we forgot to mention in the military, but he never watches our show, so but
right.
But
and he's never on the show or anything. Actually,
how
from here down, he's on the show.
But how he has medical issues that he should get checked out, but getting into the VA sucks for him.
Though that is true, I have to do the counterpoint on that.
Okay.
And that is, my dad lived an extra, say 10 years, maybe even 15 years because of the VA.
Yeah.
There were a number of surgeries that my dad had to do through the VA that they kept him alive because he was never insured. And so because he was always working little companies that couldn't afford insurance, there's no way. So just like me, he kept working from little company to little company, and they never had the money for insurance. So the VA kept him alive, whereas my mom, in the same situation, died. So I've got to give props to the VA for that. Yeah, it was a pain. Yes, navigating the VA with my dad was not any fun.
Well, yeah,
but
any insurance is better than no insurance, no matter how bad the system
and
is.
the fact that they never asked any questions, they just hauled him in and threw him in surgery every time there was a problem. Yeah, it was kind of rough, and they weren't nice to him necessarily. But he was ex-army, so he was like, I'm good with this. You know what I mean? Like,
individual
he was
results may
acclimated.
vary.
Mhm.
You know, my little brother Neil, he's never said terrible things about the VA from his experiences.
Yeah.
He's still young, so there's that, and also he is still in the system too, because now he's been working for the DoD, teaching base kids out in Japan for the last couple of years.
Right.
So he's still kind of locked into the
He's still in the loop. Like
Yeah.
my sister, she's still in the loop too, but for some reason, my sister, myself, my dad, we have pretty good genes, and nothing major has occurred until we get to this point in time, which has been good because she hasn't needed to go to the VA for much of anything at all. But of course, my sister's still working for the government even today. So she's got full coverage through everything that the government has to offer. And so I've never heard so much as a peep out of her. About
my direct personal experience has been good. And all the stuff that's bad about them, I never would have known had it not been for John Stewart going in and like, hey, look, they're still using paper records. And all of these requests are still backlogged, and you can't look stuff up. because of how it's doing it. But yeah, I mean, I had basically free dental care as a teenager because of the military.
Yep.
My mom got excellent help with what she was going through. She never would have quit smoking probably had it not been for the VA helping her out when she was having issues and saying, "Hey, you're not going to live much longer if you keep doing this," and helped her out with that. And it's what the people involved in the system that are hands on like that obviously are doing a great job. It's the other stuff that's going on where it's letting people slip through the cracks. And then with one of the things that he was doing, I had to look it up because I only remembered a little bit about it. But John Stewart actually advocated for the military, for veterans to get better care, and used his celebrity clout to get more focus put onto that. And he was talking about how they had things where they had gone through getting poisoned essentially slowly, and the VA military knew about it and didn't do anything, and was refusing basically to help these people now who had developed cancer and stuff from all the stuff they'd gone through. So it's so that would be one aspect. So our friend viewer Donald's saying VA is not good because every administration changes how they do things. So yeah.
Right.
They're at the whim. They're at the whim of the president, and that's or the presidential administration, and that is an issue, because it does seem like our political parties, they use our veterans as pawns in their political maneuvers, and that's not good. That's not good. I mean, it doesn't, and I'm not even pointing at any one party in particular. I feel like they both use them as pawns.
Isn't it funny how you say we're so ingrained to say both, as there's only two political systems?
Yep, there shouldn't be. I'm very anti that, but it's a fact for right now. The VA is, I mean, the truth is, I'm a big proponent of socialized medicine. I'm a big proponent of that, and I hate that the VA keeps getting thrown at me as how socialized medicine doesn't work, because relative to it, I can understand that if you're in the VA, that causes problems. I understand that there is a lot of red tape. I know that they did all kinds of stuff, but my dad lived 20 years longer than my mom. Mm-hmm. In the end, I think my mom would have been okay with red tape and paperwork written on carbon copy and crap like that. I think she would have been okay if she got another 20 years.
Well, I mean,
red tape or die.
I mean, comparing the something to nothing. Had my brother had VA level socialized medicine, he would have gone in for a checkup much sooner, caught what was wrong with him, and been able to have a better chance of survival against it. Yep. But since he had to pay out of pocket, he's like, it's just a sore throat. It's been persistent for a long time. It's still just a sore throat. And went over a year ignoring it because it was mild. And it's one of those things where had he had free medical care or cheap medical care, it would have been easier for him to say, I should go get checked out for this. It's only going to spend $20 to see a doctor or something.
Yeah.
I think you were in Japan. I was in Germany. We've seen socialized medicine work
perfectly. So, I still always talk about the time that my wife tripped and fell down the stairs.
And they're taken to the hospital.
Yeah, they x-rayed her and they gave her like medicine and they drew the fluid off and all this stuff and they did all these things. And then they said, we're so sorry, but we're going to have to charge you full price for this because you're not Japanese. And we went, yeah, we're Americans. We're kind of used to that. So tell us what that means. And they're like, it's going to be $80. And we were like, you want me to pay in cash right now? I mean, like, we were so prepared for this will be $5 billion. And they're like, we're so sorry. It'll be 8,000 yen. And we're like, it's $80. I got it in my pocket.
I had a similar experience with Nick, where we were in Germany and we were on one of their playgrounds, which is essentially a lot of floating logs tied together with ropes and water.
Right.
It's like you never have this in America.
No.
So it was, and he slipped and fell and got a really nasty splinter right up under the fingernail, which is a torture method. So he was in a lot of pain. And I was not prepared equipment wise to remove it myself. And we called the park's first aid person because they had that, and they looked at it, and they're like, "I'm sorry, I can't do anything because of the legal reasons. You've got to take them to the hospital." And I'm like, "I really don't want to take them to the hospital for a splinter. I'd rather go just buy a pair of tweezers." And when I say splinter, this was like the size of a toothpick.
Right.
It's not like splinter size, but I was encouraged enough to take them there. I took them there, and they do that. I'm like, "Oh God, this is going to be so expensive." It was like $25.
Right.
And it's like, I mean, when you look at it, it's like you pay $25 to remove a splinter. It's like, no, what you don't understand is I paid $25 to get professional care at a hospital with someone who was probably paid more than $25 for what they did by a lot.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing that we don't look at when we talk about that particular situation. Because I'm seeing Donald.
You paid like $300. You paid $300 to babysit your own kid for an hour.
Yeah,
right?
that was yes, right.
In
that
America,
it was more than that.
Okay, a lot. We'll just say a lot.
So my kid was, I want to say 3 or 4.
He was tiny.
I went into the bathroom and he had pulled some unidentified pills out and had spread them out around him on the floor. I'm a parent. Did he take any of them? We don't know what those pills are. There was no identification on the pills, nothing.
They weren't brand new, so you couldn't just count the quantity and compare it to what you had.
And he didn't. It came from, he'd done something with the bottle. I don't remember what it was, but I couldn't find a bottle anywhere.
He swallowed the bottle. He didn't take any of the pills.
Swallowed the bottle, but none of the pills. So I'm a good parent. I took him to the ER. That's because, I mean, you know, that's what you do. You take your child to
don't
the
let your
ER.
kid
You
die
don't
on your
wait
watch.
to see if he dies. So I took him to the ER, and they said, well, what we will do is we'll sit here and we'll watch him for the next 2 hours and see what it is, because we can't identify the pills either. And I think later on we found out that they were vitamin C, and he didn't have any of them. He was just putting them in order, because that's what he does. But yeah, they charged us nearly $1,000 for that. Nobody did anything. They didn't x-ray him. They didn't do anything. They sat there and observed him for 2 hours.
Well, I would guess they probably didn't even sit there. They probably stuck him in a room.
No, they stuck him in a room with me and told me to call a nurse if anything happened.
Yeah.
So they didn't even observe him. They just gave me the red button and then charged nearly $1,000 for it. It took forever for us to pay that off. Because it was like, the lesson that we learned was, don't take our kid to the hospital. Just hope he doesn't die. That was the lesson we learned.
That's the lesson they were teaching. Yeah.
And I'm like, whoa, that's not what you want to teach, but you know, that's what they were teaching. And I do get that, you know, Donald's talking about takes months for appointments. It didn't take any time at all in Japan
or Germany.
I think so. To me, I'm sitting there thinking the VA needs an overhaul, not socialized medicine is bad. You know what I mean? Like, the VA needs an overhaul. That's not indicative of socialized medicine. When I was in Japan, we never waited. Nowhere. I never waited anywhere. I never waited for an appointment. I even found a doctor that spoke English and never waited. You know what I mean? Like, I could have. I went to a doctor once in Japanese, and oh man, they tested me, and he sits there and he sits down with this very serious look, and he says, I have to tell you that your blah, 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 blah is not doing so well. And I'm like, I don't know that word. Oh, crap. What did he just say? Is that heart? Lungs? I don't know my anatomy words. I mean, this is not something you say in everyday speech in Japanese. So I'm like, he just said my blah, 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 blah is not doing so well. And I start talking to him for a minute. Okay, what did you see? And he said, well, your blah, blah, blah is at 2.5 and your bleep, 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 bleep is at 3.1. And that's not and I'm like, I've got all the numbers, but I have no idea what you're saying. And, you know, of course, because he's saying, you know, hemoglobin and things like that. I don't know the words for that in Japanese, but it was a very funny thing. And then he was like, have you been exercising a lot recently? And I went, that's a weird question. And I said, but my driver's license got revoked at one point in time, and I had to ride my bike to school every day for a while. And he's like, oh, Oh, well, then you're fine. And I was like, what? And apparently later on I found out, because I wrote down the words that he was saying, and I went to some of my friends and I said, what is it? And they said kidneys. Something about my kidney operation was slightly elevated or whatever. And he was trying to say it was slightly elevated. I didn't get that. So then he tried simpler words, and he ended up with not working was his simpler words. So anyway, that's my funny story of screwing around in Japan.
But yeah, the system just needs to be better, because obviously people serving in the military deserve the best that we can give them.
That's one of the things that I feel always is kind of weird about the way that our country kind of operates. There's a lot of, man, they give a lot for the nation. And then when they come out, I mean, the hippies of Vietnam notwithstanding, because now we've got a culture that actually embraces our military people and no longer does the weird crap we got in Vietnam. But it doesn't seem like the system embraces them. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like they've gotten the people to stop being weird towards the vets.
Right.
I mean, obviously there will always be outriders. There will always be outriders. But in general, I feel like the general feel, you don't feel like you should be embarrassed to say you were in the military. I certainly don't feel embarrassed to say I wish I had had a tour. You know what I mean? Like, I don't feel like that's an embarrassing thing to say. Like, I feel like people would have been in 1968 or 69, you know? So I don't know. I feel like we've gotten part of this figured out, but we haven't gotten all of it.
Other than, like, here's your 5% discount at Denny's.
Yeah. Yeah, like the system doesn't work well.
Yeah, and then what Donald's saying the same. This is why we have the M16 and not the AK, not the Kalashnikov. Because we go to the lowest bidder.
Yep, Donald's saying that over there.
I'm not seeing that comment. I'm only seeing Facebook ones.
Oh, this is Facebook. It says we buy things to the lowest bidder, and most good medical staff go to better pay, and VA relies on volunteers a lot.
Oh, okay, yeah. So I thought I might have missed a different type of rifle conversation.
No. It's the lowest bidder thing. I remember when I was a teenager, that being the example given to me. So in the 80s, someone saying this is why we have the M16 and this is why Russia has the AK-47 type thing. Because I remember trying to learn about different guns when I was younger, and so it's like, this is the one you want, not that one type thing.
It's because all the money in the military goes to R&D. It doesn't actually go to operations. And that's part of the problem. The F-35 prototypes are insane. They are like bizarrely awesome, super incredible. There has not been another VTOL F-35 put into production because they're too complicated. So the only ones that are out there are like the 5 that they made for demonstration purposes. The F-35 runs on SVTOL, which is short or vertical takeoff, which means that they didn't put that extra rotary fan in there. They've got it on short transfer with the engine pointed down for quick takeoff. But that still means that you can launch it off of the LVA sort of carriers, which is great. But that wasn't what we built it for. We built it to replace the AV-8B. And what we're ending up with is the V-22 taking over the job of what they wanted the F-35 to do. So in practice, they're putting in the F-22, which is the Osprey, which is a tilt rotor, which means that it's running much slower in the battlefield. So it's the same kind of problem that we run into a lot. They put tons of money into the R&D on the F-35.
There's probably like a third of people watching who are keeping up with you, a third of people who are Googling stuff, and another third who have just gone, these are numbers and letters. I'm waiting for the joke.
We made a cool plane that can take off straight up and land. And when we got to the production of it,
yeah, exactly.
Instead, we built another one, which is called a tilt rotor, which has propellers that can turn upward like this, like a helicopter. And they're using that. But it's a rotor. and there's only so much speed you can get out of a propellered aircraft. So the F-35 was originally designed to come in at Mach 2, a very high speed, engage the enemy, support ground troops while it was there, while hovering, and then get out at high speed. And instead, they're using the Osprey as a gunship and doing that for ground support, and that puts a lot of more people in danger.
So is the advantage of the Osprey over like an attack helicopter, like the Apache, is that
Yeah,
it's
the
faster
Osprey's
overall?
It's the same thing as you get with like the C-130, which is that's the Hercules. It's an ancient plane that we've used a lot as a gunship. You put mini guns on the out the doors, and you just start shooting people on the ground. That works. And you get a Hercules. The Hercules will do what will circle an area, tilt it over so that the guns are pointed down, and that's great. But it's also slow. They're easy to take out. With law rockets, you can just take them right down. And so it's
slow moving targets.
Yeah, slow moving targets. It's tactically it's a bad thing. So part of the reason we brought in that aircraft was for support. They'd used the AV-8B, which is those are called the Hawker Harrier jump jets, and people have seen them. They look very strange, but they used the AV-8Bs with support. So they'd bring them in, hover, and then shoot at people pivoting. But like I said, the system, the engine that the Harrier uses requires water to keep it cool, and it vaporizes that water. So you've got 90 seconds of hover. The F-35 was designed in a better system to hover as long as it needs to.
Yeah. And of course,
so
if it was orcs from Warhammer 40K, they would do many guns, MANY, and put as many guns as possible, as opposed to mini guns, MINE. All right, MINI. Sorry. Well, cool. Now that we've given you your education on military vehicles,
way too much on military stuff. I'm sorry.
Yep. I guess as we roll out of here, obviously, we want to say thank you to those who are helping keep our country safe and helping do what they signed up to do and be part of a society that is building towards something better. Because I think that's, as a human, that should be all of our goals, is to try to contribute to society in some positive way. Which does not explain why we do this podcast. But
well, I guess really what it boils down to is we respect our military people. Thanks for doing the thing you did. And some people laid down their lives, and that was really cool too. I mean, not cool, but
it's a big sacrifice, and we want to recognize.
Yeah, we want to acknowledge the sacrifice of the people who laid down their lives. There were a lot of them, and especially to support the nation and support what we stand for. Same thing as kind of what we were saying in Memento Mori, which Pike says, where is something to the effect of, to protect our ability to, they went before us and they died protecting the ability so we can continue doing what we're doing.
So always got to bring it back to Star Trek.
Of course I do.
Of course.
Have you met me?
Mute his mic, quick.
And mute. Well, cool. I know we're a few minutes early, but I feel like this is a good stopping point for this one.
Wait, let's start some other discussion that will require me to talk for 3 hours
about Star Trek.
Oh, I could do that.
Yeah.
I don't even need assistance for that one.
Yeah, Wolverines.
I got to pee in the car now. Okay.
Yeah. All right.
Well, it was a good movie.
Both of them. The remake wasn't that bad either.
I didn't see the remake. They
changed enough stuff that it's worth seeing, and the stuff they changed, it still was a good movie.
I'm missing something.
Red Dawn, the movie.
Oh, I never saw the remake. Okay.
Yeah,
I never saw the remake either.
They keep the Wolverines as the mascot for the high school and as their battle cry. So that part's still the same. They changed who the enemy is to match with the time, because the time period has changed in it, and because tech has changed to a degree. There's other stuff that has changed in it, but it's a decent remake. It's not, the first one's obviously going to be the best one since this is the first one I saw.
Cool.
All right.
Okay. Well, that's really pretty much all the time we've got for today. And we really don't want to get me started on something else. So we'll get moving.
Oh, next Monday is the
Next
first Monday in
Monday
June.
is night time thingy.
And did we decide? We decided
There you
9 to
go.
10.
It's
9
now nighttime for Alex.
9
Good night,
p.m.
guys.
9. The little night music from Warner Brothers starts playing from their cartoons. So 9 p.m. to 10 p.m. Mountain Standard Time next Monday.
And for those of you who watch Quack will be started by Brian on Mondays, so we don't have to worry about me being late out of this show. So now that he can control the show as well, Quack will start on time, and we'll just transfer over when we get there. So
Cool.
Until next week, thanks for joining us, everybody, and thanks for having this wonderful discussion. And until then, I've been Guy.
I've been Troy.
And I've been Alex.
And this is Geek Tank.
I'm caught sleeping at the wheel.
Click the button. Click the button now.